The biggest mistakes people make when buying a home in Dallas usually nothing to do with picking the wrong house. And unfortunately, these mistakes can cost buyers tens of thousands of dollars, years of frustration, and in some cases, cause them to move again much sooner than they ever planned. Today, we're gonna talk about the biggest mistakes I see Dallas home buyers make, why they happen, and most importantly, how you can avoid them. And make sure you stay until the end because I'm going to share the mistakes that create more buyer regret than almost anything else. And it's something most people don't even realize until after they've already moved in. A few months ago, I was helping a family relocate to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Like many buyers moving here, they had a ton of research done before ever stepping foot in Texas. They watched YouTube videos. They read articles. They compared home prices. They studied store ratings. They spent hours scrolling through listings online. By the time we first spoke, they were convinced they knew exactly where they wanted to live. They had their sights set on a particular suburb. The homes looked great online. The schools checked the boxes. The neighborhood had a strong reputation. On paper, it really did look perfect. Then they came to Dallas for a weekend home tour. And by the end of that weekend, they completely changed their minds. Not because there was anything wrong with the area they originally liked, but because once they experienced the commute, saw the traffic patterns, visited different communities, and spent time in neighborhoods they hadn't even considered before, their priorities completely shifted. The house they thought they wanted wasn't actually a lifestyle they wanted. And that's one of the biggest mistakes buyers make. They spend so much time shopping for houses that they forget to shop for the life they're gonna have to live after they move in. If we're just meeting, my name's Eugene Gonzalez. I help buyers and sellers navigate the Dallas-Fort Worth market and avoid expensive real estate mistakes. Let's start with the biggest mistake I see: buying the house before choosing the location. Most buyers naturally focus on the home itself, the kitchen, the floor plan, the backyard, the upgrades, the square footage. All of those things, they do matter, but here's the reality. You can change almost everything about a house. You can remodel a kitchen. You can upgrade a flooring. You can paint every wall. You can renovate bathrooms. What you cannot change is where the house itself is located. You can't move it closer to work. You can't change the traffic patterns. You can't suddenly create restaurants, parks, or amenities nearby. You can't shorten the drive to your favorite places, and yet many buyers make decisions primarily based on the house itself. I've seen buyers purchase a house they absolutely loved and then slowly realize they hated the commute. They hated how far they were from friends. They hated spending so much time in the car. The excitement of the home eventually wore off. The reality of the location, it just didn't. The happiest homeowners I've worked with usually prioritize location first and the house second. Another mistake buyers make is assuming Dallas is one market. It really isn't. Dallas-Fort Worth is massive, and every area behaves very, very differently. What's happening in Frisco may be completely different from what's happening in Plano. What's happening in McKinney may be different from what's happening in Richardson. And what's happening in Prosper may not resemble what's happening in East Dallas. Yet many buyers approach the market as if every neighborhood operates exactly the same. They hear a national headline. Maybe they hear inventory is rising, or prices are falling, or that buyers have leverage in today's market. Then they assume that applies all over the place. But real estate is very hyperlocal. In some areas, buyers may have negotiating power, and other desirable homes still move very, very quickly. In some neighborhoods, inventory may be growing, and other neighborhoods, quality homes remain very difficult to find. Understanding your specific market matters more than understanding national headlines. Another major mistake is focusing only on the purchase price. I see this all the time. Buyers become obsessed with the price of the home. And while that's obviously important, it's only one piece of the financial picture. Dallas buyers also need to think about property taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, HOA fees if applicable, and future repairs. Many buyers are surprised when they discover two similarly priced homes can have very different monthly ownership costs. That's why I always encourage buyers that focus on monthly affordability rather than simply a purchase price. Because the goal isn't getting approved for a home, the goal is comfortably living in it. And that's what leads directly into another mistake: buying at the absolute top of your budget. Just because a lender approves a certain number doesn't mean that's where you really should be. Life really does happen. Cars break down, families grow, jobs change, unexpected expenses just show up. The buyers who leave themselves breathing room financially tend to enjoy homeownership much more than buyers who stretch out every dollar simply to maximize their purchase price. One of the most common regrets I hear isn't, "I wish I bought more expensive home." Honestly, it's usually the opposite. "I wish we had left ourselves more flexibility." Another mistake that becomes especially dangerous in competitive situations is making emotional decisions. Now, don't get me wrong, buying a home is just an emotional decision, and it really should be. This is where you're going to live. This is where memories will be made. It's where your life happens day to day. But emotion should support a decision. It shouldn't drive the decision. I've seen buyers walk into a home and fall in love within 60 seconds. And then from that moment forward, every conversation becomes about justifying why they should buy that specific home. Suddenly, they stop evaluating risks objectively. They stop comparing alternatives. They start overlooking concerns they would normally take seriously. The problem is that emotions fade. The mortgage payment does not. The commute doesn't. The maintenance does not. And that's why it's so important to balance excitement with logic throughout the buying process. Another mistake many buyers make is skipping important due diligence. Sometimes buyers get so worried about losing a home that they rush through the process. They don't ask enough questions. They don't investigate concerns. They don't fully understand what they're purchasing. A home inspection isn't just a box to check. It's an opportunity to understand the property. The same goes for reviewing disclosures, researching neighborhoods, and evaluating future resale potential. The goal isn't simply to get under contract. The goal is to make a smart decision. And smart decisions require information. Let's talk about another mistake that affects a lot of relocation buyers: trying to recreate their previous city. This is especially common for buyers moving from California, the Northeast, or other major metropolitan areas. They arrive in Dallas looking for an exact replica of where they came from. The same feel, the same housing style, the same lifestyle, the same everything really. The problem is that Dallas is Dallas. And one of the best ways to enjoy living here is really to embrace what makes Dallas unique rather than constantly comparing it to somewhere else. Every city really has its strengths. Every city has its trade-offs. The buyers who adapt tend to enjoy their move far more than those who spend years wishing Dallas was someplace else. Another mistake buyers make is underestimating how important future resale value can be. Even if you believe you'll stay here forever, life changes. People get promoted, families expand, retirement plans shift. Unexpected opportunities appear. Most people eventually sell, and that's a fact. And when that time comes, you'll want a home that appeals to future buyers as well. That's why I encourage people to think beyond just their own preferences. Ask yourself how the market may view the property later. What features might make it attractive? What challenges could limit demand? Think ahead doesn't mean sacrificing what you truly want. It just simply means making a more informed decision. Now, let's talk about something many Dallas buyers don't fully appreciate until after they move: commute times. A location can look fantastic on the map. Then reality shows up Monday morning. DMW is huge. Traffic patterns really matter. A 12-mile drive can feel very different depending on where it's located. That's why I always recommend buyers physically drive routes that matter to them. I would drive to work during work hours or just during those heavy commute hours. Drive to school. Drive to the places that you'll actually visit regularly. Maps can tell a part of the story, but experiencing it yourself tells the rest of the story. Another mistake buyers make is rushing because they're afraid they'll miss out. This actually happens after buyers lose a house they really wanted. Suddenly, every home feels urgent. Every listing feels like the last opportunity. Fear starts driving decisions. But here's what I've learned. The right house is rarely the last house. There will always be another opportunity. Buyers who remain patient typically make better decisions than buyers who act out of fear. Patience isn't always easy, and I get that, but it can save you from a very costly mistake. Now, let's get to the mistake I promised at the beginning. The mistake that creates more regret than almost anything else I see. Buying a home that fits your current life, but not your future life. This happens more often than people realize. A buyer focuses entirely on today's needs. Then 2 years later, circumstances change, like life does. Maybe they're working from home, and maybe they had children. Maybe family members move closer. Maybe they need additional space. Maybe they want a different lifestyle. The best home purchases considers both the present and the future life. You don't need a crystal ball. You just should think about where your life could reasonably be headed over the next 5 to 7 years. A home doesn't need to solve every future problem, but it should give you the room to grow just a bit, because moving is very expensive. Buying and selling repeatedly is very expensive. The more your home can adapt with you, the better your experience is overall likely to be. And at the end of the day, buying a home in Dallas doesn't have to be complicated, but it does require more than simply finding a house you like online. You need to understand the neighborhood, the lifestyle, the financial commitment, the future resale potential, and how the property fits your long-term goals. The buyers who do that tend to look back on their purchase with confidence. The buyers who don't often end up learning expensive lessons after closing. If you're thinking about buying anywhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and want help avoiding these mistakes before they become costly problems, reach out. I'd be happy to walk you through your goals, your budget, and the areas you're considering so you can make a decision that makes sense both today and years from now. And before you go, what's the biggest concern you have about buying a home in Dallas right now? Drop it in the comments and let's talk about it.